Okay, so for this video, I'm going to walk you through lighting this awesome Braun coffee maker. It's one of my favorite objects of all time, 1972 Aeromaster, actually. And we are going to just light this thing up from scratch using Lightkit Pro 3. And I think during this video, you're going to see how I use Lightkit Pro 3. You're also going to learn a lot about the different features. Now, there's tons of videos covering all the features. I highly recommend going and checking out all of them because there are so many features, it's sort of hard to name in one video. So, all right, we have our scene, we have our generic, we have no background, we've just got our generic default light on. We're running Redshift, but this doesn't mean that you couldn't do the exact same thing in Octane or Arnold or even Physical. But today we're using Redshift. Okay, so we need to create a background, and that's when our cyc is going to come in. So these cycs are amazing. We have a ton of different cycs to choose from. I'm going to start with an S-curve, and I'm going to jump out into my perspective view, and I'm just going to quickly manipulate my cyc to sort of be what I want it to be. I'm going to create a little bit more of a slope here. I want that flat to sit right where the coffee maker is, and I'm going to make sure that my width is only as wide as I need it to be. So I could come in here and just do it like this, or I could come over to the attributes and manipulate it here as well. I'm going to give it a bit more curve because I want that light to really sort of cascade up that wall to make it feel a little bit more seamless. I'm also going to push this up a little bit and maybe make the whole thing a little bit deeper. Okay, right about there. Let's go ahead and turn on the render view now and see how that looks. What's great too about the cyc object is that we're going to be able to choose a material for it right off the bat just by going over to the cyc material tab in the cyc object, and all you have to do is tap whichever renderer that you're currently in, and it's going to load an 85% white material that you can manipulate. You're not locked to that by any means. So hit the Redshift material. It's going to automatically assign a nice white material to the cyc object, which it'll update here in the viewport. All right, so we've got our background set. Now it's time to start adding some lights. Let's jump over here and get ready to add a light. All right, let's add first a softbox square, which is going to immediately come in targeted at the center. Now this is, right now we don't have any stand, so I'm going to we don't need a stand for this. I'm going to turn off stand, and I'm going to manipulate the size. And the display mode that I usually like to work in is constant shading, or I'll do a quick shading. That's typically what I'm using when I'm using Redshift. All right, so let's just bring the height way up, and I'm going to rotate it down a little bit. I'm just dragging the light. Oops, I do want to add a little bit of roundness to that. I meant to grab this manipulator, and all I'm going to do is sort of walk it in and try to put this highlight exactly where I want it on the coffee maker. Right now that seems to be right about here. That's feeling pretty good. I want to make it a little bit wider, so I'm going to come over to the width controls over my attributes and just change the width a little bit, maybe change the scale. I'm also going to change the rotation. You can do that all right here in the attribute editor too, which is really great. You can actually change the pitch if I want to raise it up just a little bit. That feels pretty good. I want to just put this highlight in a nice cool place right on the edge here. Let's open up our main tab and increase our master intensity to maybe 200%. And now you can see this is where Lightkit Pro becomes really fun, because you can have this control that you just couldn't have before. So the idea here of doing cast light versus reflected light means that I'm going to be able to throw more cast light, in this case 250% more cast light into the shot, and I could lower or raise my reflected light, meaning the intensity of the reflection could get hotter or lower based on this attribute here. So let's go ahead and give that maybe 250% on that. And now we've got a nice bright highlight, maybe going a little bit higher on that reflected intensity. Good. And now I think I'm going to make it a little bit wider. So I'm going to make this like a 200 units wide, just to widen out this highlight a little bit. That's looking pretty good to me. All right, so I'm going to call this one my key. And we're going to add another light, so I'm just going to add another softbox square. And this time I'm going to put this one sort of on the opposite side. And I'm going to do something interesting for this one. I'm actually going to do a POV placement on this one. So I'm going to actually look through my light. So I'm actually able to look through my light like it's a camera and position that light accordingly. All right, that's pretty good. I'm just going to hit that POV placement button again to jump back out. And now we've placed our highlight on the opposite side, but it is probably too tiny. I'm also going to turn off my my mounts. And let's just manipulate this size a little bit. And I feel like that's pretty good. Maybe a little bit wider. Come in here, make it a little bit taller. All right, that's pretty good. I don't want that one to overpower my key, so I'm going to make it a little bit, I've got to make it a little bit skinnier. Looks cooler that way. And the rotation, I'm just going to rotate it back off of that surface, maybe something more closer to the edge. Yes, that's actually feeling pretty good. Let's bring the overall intensity up. Good. I'm just blocking this out right now. I'm just blocking it out. We'll go in and fix a lot of these, the ratio of key to fill and whatnot in a minute. All right, now I'm going to add like an overall top light to this. So I'm going to do that with a softbox circle. And I know that I'm not going to need a mount on this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I'm going to bring my rotation all the way to 360, and my pitch is going to be at 90. So it's going to sit right on top of everything. I'm going to hit T for scale. I'm going to scale this entire light up. So it's going to be a little bit more of a diffuse overall light. I need to see this light, contributions of this light soloed, because I don't really know what it's doing overall. So the way that you do that with Leica Pro 3 is you're going to double click the icon and it's going to solo that light. So now I'm just looking at the contributions of this top light. So immediately I know I'm going to increase my master intensity. I probably also want to pitch it out a little bit, maybe a little bit more, to kind of bring that highlight just over this curve a little bit. That's pretty good. Let's also bring that intensity up again. Overall intensity up. That's feeling pretty good. It's sort of like our general fill. I'm going to double click that icon again to unisolate that light. And now we're seeing the contribution of all three. The softbox, this top light is still not quite big enough for my taste. So I'm just going to go a little bit bigger because I want that highlight to sort of kind of crawl over the entire top. This is looking pretty good. Now it's time to start working out our intensities. I think our key light, our cast key light, is probably a bit too intense in just the cast light. And I believe our top is actually a little dim. So I'm going to actually increase the light I'm throwing out. Oop, too bright. Don't want it to be too blown out. Something like in there feels pretty good. And our key light, we're just going to rename this guy top, and we're going to rename this one fill. And now we've got a really good, simple three light setup going here that we can manipulate. All right, so our key light looks pretty good. Let's jump into, let's just make sure, I'm just going to try to get Redshift to do a original size. And let's go ahead and zoom in here. And let's actually just make this control 1. And let's just manipulate this. I'm just going to draw a region right over this highlight because I want to art direct this highlight a little bit. So this key light, I'm just going to isolate it, double click to isolate that light. I'm going to art direct this edge a little bit more. For my taste, I don't like this hard edge to the actual light shape, so I'm going to turn up the rounding, which you could do right here. Just go ahead and turn up that rounding, and that's going to round out these corners a little bit. The other thing I'm going to do is get a little bit more of a gradient happening. We've got a circular gradient on this light, so I'm just going to darken this up a little bit, this end gradient knot, maybe like in here. And this is just going to give us a little bit more of a gradient. Now we could use the soft edge to bring a little bit more soft edge to that light fixture just by bringing this up to maybe like 15%. You're going to see, if we bring it up to like 60%, it's going to soften that edge of that highlight. I don't want a lot of that, so I'm going to give it maybe just 10%. And I don't want to see so much of the imperfections. Right now our imperfections are at 50, which are simulating those like wrinkles on the front of like a softbox. So I'm going to bring that down to like 10%. And I think my brightness I could bring up to maybe 400% on just the reflectivity. Great. Okay, cool. So let me just double click that light to get back out and see all the different lights. And I'm just going to region over this top part and really nail down what I want this top light to look like. This top light, I think, would be kind of cool to use a little bit more of that soft edge so that it feels more sort of like a softer highlight, not so much of a plasticky highlight or a hard edge highlight. This is going to make it feel a little bit softer, I think, and not call so much attention out to itself. I need to change the size. I want this to be a bit bigger. I could come over here and scale it, or I could just come over to the radius and maybe type in 220 in the radius to make it a little bit bigger. That feels pretty good. Okay, so my fill light, I believe, is in good shape. I do think it needs to be a little bit dimmer. So let's just grab our fill, and I don't want to change the cast light. I just want to make the reflection a little bit dimmer, maybe by half. That's pretty good. And maybe it went too far, maybe just to like 75%, something like that. Feels pretty good. Okay, so let's go jump back in here, and sorry, our UI is a little bit tight, and let's turn off our region, and there we go. So right away, we're able to get really nice results without a ton of messing around. And of course, there's so many options and so many different ways that you could do this with Lightkit Pro 3. This is just happens to be a way that I like to work with it. Oh, I forgot to mention one interesting part is that we can we can just quickly create some color to these lights. Maybe we want our key light to be warm, and our fill light, let's just say our top light, is actually going to be cool. So you can instantly start creating different color moods to this, and maybe our fill light is also warm. So you can start to play around with different color temperatures, and we've got these quick selections here that make that very, very easy. And then, yeah, so what else was I doing for this render? Well, to get a little bit more global light, another thing that I did was create a half dome cyc object, and I pulled it down below everything, and I went ahead and I made it pretty big. Let's see, let's just make this pretty big, and we'll bring the height up to maybe like 1200, something like that. And let's also give it a material, a redshift material. So let's just jump out of that camera so we can see what's going on here. So this is actually what we're seeing in our outside camera, so we can sort of see all the lights working together. It looks pretty cool, actually. It kind of looks a lot like just an interesting render on its own. All right, so let's just jump back into that camera. Let's just jump that camera and say lock. Oops, let's just make sure we get out of that and back in here and lock that down. Oops, there we go. All right, so now this little ambient half dome is bouncing a little bit light around and making things look a little bit more interesting. Okay, so last light I want to create is a little tiny little ping on maybe this corner right here. And I'm going to do that with a softbox circle, and we're going to jump back out here, and I'm going to do a POV placement on this one. Let's just go no mounts on that. We're going to go POV placement. And I am just going to put the light pretty far away and sort of aim it a little bit at that top part. And let's hit POV placement again. And I'm going to isolate this light so I can just see that light. And I'm going to bring its reflectivity, its reflection intensity up to like pretty high, like 900 or something like that. Then I'm going to take my soft edge and move that to like 25%. What I'm doing is I'm creating a very tight little specular highlight. Now I'm going to start to use some of my more traditional rotation controls. So I'm going to rotate this until I just find the right spot for it. Right about there, and maybe a little bit more of a tilt up. I love these controls. These controls make this process like so much easier. Okay, so maybe we could bring the radius up a little bit. All right, cool. So now we've got that like tight ping type of highlight. Let's double click it to get back out and see the contribution overall. And maybe it could be even a little bit brighter. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then we'll just bring the size, maybe we'll bring it back down just to make it more of like that pinged out highlight. So that's like a really easy way to create like a ping, a highlight that just is like a really tight spot. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much how I would approach this type of shot. And it's very close to what we ended up getting here if we open up our picture viewer. This has a little bit of a color grade associated with it, but it's all the same principles that I just did right here for you, using the cyc object, the manipulation tools of our Lightkit lights, and a few tricks with a double click solo and all that sort of thing. There's so many videos that cover all of these things in detail, so I highly recommend checking out all the videos that we've got covering Light Kit Pro 3, and I'll see you in the next video.